Go ahead.
All right, so good evening, everybody. This is such a great opportunity for all of us to learn more about college planning and financial planning and saving in order to prepare for college in the future. So we have Mr. Dave Cohen here, who we have worked with for a number of years at Whittier Christian High School. He has a wonderful background and such knowledge in this area, as he's worked with this industry, and his children have also gone through the Christian educational environment. And so I just want to start us off with a word of prayer, and then we'll let him get started. So, Father, we just thank you for this evening. We thank you for who you are, God. You are a loving God, and you call us to plan and be good stewards of our finances. Father, all of our finances are yours and belong to you. And we just ask that you would increase, Father, where is needed, so that we may plan accordingly for our students and children and for their future. God, you have such a perfect plan for every single student that has a future, whether it be college, whether it be trade school, whatever the case is. Father, we commit it to you, and I ask your blessings on this webinar this evening. In your name, amen. So I will hand it over to Dave, and if anyone wants to post in the chat, we will save our questions towards the end, and then I'll answer any questions that I may have as we progress through, and just kind of keep track of that. All right, all yours.
Thanks, Leah. All right, so if you can just confirm that the screen changed.
Yep, changed on my end.
All right, perfect. So I just to share a little bit about who I am, so that you know who's speaking. I'm a financial advisor. For those who are going to sit and worry about it all night, my accent is from South Africa, and I came to the United States in 2000 and have been working in the financial and college planning industry for many years, and actually with Whittier Christian for probably 8, 9, 10 years, and have helped a number of parents at the school. And the goal for tonight is really just to give everybody some information. And as some questions come up, perhaps type them in the chat, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that I'm able to at the end of the webinar. And as Leah said, I do have 2 kids that have been through college, and so have experienced everything that you guys are experiencing, and on a daily basis speak to people on both their finances and the college planning side. As a financial advisor, I work with families to help plan for their retirement and their finances, and as a holistic preparation for their futures. And the philosophy that we kind of look at is that we're all trying to fill this bucket for retirement, and the bucket might have some holes in, and so we're trying to identify some inefficiencies and places where the bucket might have some holes in. And on the college side is where we found is often a large hole in the bucket, because besides our homes, we might spend more money on education for our kids than anything else that we might in our lifetimes other than our homes. So if we could make that more efficient, then that is a good place to work on. And so that's why the college and the finances are going together. So let's kind of just get this straight right from the beginning. We would all love our parents to be going to the very best colleges and schools, and I want that for your kids as well. But what we also want to be careful of is that so if there's an abundance of money and money's not an issue, then great, no big deal. but we want to take a look and see what we can do to protect the parents' future and give our kids the best future that we can. So that's why we talk about both of these. Let's start off with talking about the 4 major responsibilities or challenges for parents. And the first is to maintain our current lifestyle. As financial challenges, this is, as we know, markets go up and down, times change through the pandemic or through good times and bad times. And that's one of the challenges that parents have, or responsibilities, are to maintain their current lifestyle. Staying on track for retirement. And this is a big one when I talk to parents on what they're wanting to do. And then funding our college for our kids, and is kind of next on the list. And then securing our family's future in case of unexpected circumstances. And this is perhaps on that side is making sure we've saved for emergency funds or got life insurance in case something happens, and we can still fund the things that we would want to fund if we were still around to take care of our kids. And often we forget about some of those things. And I've had a number of families that have lost loved ones, but have also been fortunate enough to have planned in advance so that they've been able to fund the things that they wanted for their family while they were still alive with us. Let's take a look at some statistics so that you know why we're talking about some of these things. The fastest growing age group for college debt, 50 and older, is one of the fastest growing age groups for student loan debt. And this is surprising for some folk. Then 60 and older is the fastest growing age group for student loan debt. And the reason for that is very often is because we're funding our kids' college. So let's just set some expectations, because often I ask when folk want to talk to me, I say, what are we looking for? And they say, well, can we find grants and scholarships for our kids? Or that the expectations for the cost of college is not necessarily realistic. But if we take a look at I know we're going back a way on this, but if you take a look at the way tuition and college costs have grown, it's way more than many others. We all know that medical care has gone up dramatically, but in fact, tuition and college costs has almost double that. So when we look at projected costs, if we looking at our kids, if our kids are 18 right now, you'll see the blue is for public colleges, for private colleges, and the green is for public colleges. And we can see the expectation here of what college might cost for our kids. If you've got a newborn today, you can see it's actually pretty dramatic as to what the college costs are. So for those of us who, like myself, are grandparents and we're wanting to help fund our grandkids' college, then we can see why very often folk are needing help. Let's take a look here at costs versus financial aid. And you can see here that over a period of time, college costs are continuing to rise, while financial aid over a period of time has declined. And these numbers are over the last 10 years. You can see that college costs have gone up pretty dramatically, and total financial aid for undergrads has actually decreased. So what we're doing is we're covering here one of the reasons why this is so important for us. So how much financial aid should I expect in reality? And when we look here, grants and scholarships, most people, if I talk to them, say, can you find me some grants and scholarships? And let's take a look at what in reality grants and scholarships are available. And grants are based on need-based, which is based on your finances and the FAFSA form. We'll cover that in a few minutes. And 50% of the families currently are receiving grants, but this is really the amount is about $5,000, and the families that apply on the FAFSA form. And then the scholarships are really merit-based, which is based on the student, which is based on their gifts, their talents, their grades, the SAT scores, GPA, all that kind of stuff. And so you can see that amounts to a little more than what the grants are. So every school, I'd like to point out here, every school is different. Every family is going to be different, and every student is going to be different. So while we're talking about this, the kid next to your student in class that has the same grades, the same subjects, going to the same school might pay a different amount for their college. And so this is really a personalized thing that happens for college, and is actually the reason for why I'm doing what I'm doing, is because it's very different for every family, and it's based on that family's finances and their personal situation. So we're going to offer an opportunity at the end for families to talk to me individually, which would be confidential, and talk about their own situations and their own goals and their own expectations and their own finances. Let's take a look at the area that most people focus on for savings, is saying, well, can we find grants and scholarships? In reality, where I've found that most people save most of their money is actually in their decision making and in proper planning and smarter decisions. And so, yes, we want to find whatever grants and scholarships we can, but actually the savings comes mostly from proper planning and smart decisions. So if we think about when we buy a house, what is our decision process when we buy a house? We don't just go out and say, well, let's see what's available, let's see what we can find, we'll pay whatever we want. The reality is we look at our finances, we figure out what we can afford, we look at our future planning, and that's really what those decisions are made based on that information. And in reality, the same thing should happen when we're planning for college. And so that's the question, is do we have a proper plan for our finances and for college? So let's take a look at the first part of financial aid and the FAFSA form. There's three different types of financial aid. You get need-based financial aid, which is based on the FAFSA form. You get merit-based financial aid, which is based on the student and their gifts and talents and achievements. And then you get negotiated financial aid, which is sometimes if you're applying to mostly private schools and you have competing schools, you might be able to get negotiated financial aid based on the schools and the planning that you've done. So let's take a look at the FAFSA. And firstly, the FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And remember the free in the front, because if you get to a website that's going to charge you something for the FAFSA form, it's probably the wrong place. And it's a form that most people will need to complete in order to get any need-based financial aid. And it determines our ability to qualify for that need-based financial aid. So those three types of financial aid that we looked at are merit-based, need-based, negotiated financial aid, and we want to look for all three if possible. So the first reason is, why should I complete the FAFSA form? And firstly, most schools will require you to complete the FAFSA form in order to assess your possible financial aid. You don't need to if you don't want to complete the FAFSA form, but you might not you won't be considered for any financial aid if you do not complete the FAFSA form. So what does the FAFSA form give me if I do complete it? The first thing is, if I can understand what the purpose of the FAFSA form is, then it'll help. And what it does is it gives me our family's EFC number, which stands for Expected Financial Contribution. And this is a number that is given to us after we've completed the FAFSA form. The schools don't see all your financial, your individual financial information. but they will see this EFC number and will then base the need-based financial aid on that EFC number. Now, in reality, the lower the EFC is, the higher the possibility for need-based financial aid. The higher the EFC, the less possibility there is for financial aid, and I'll kind of show you that in a second. So my expected family contribution is also not my financial aid. It's just the number that's assigned based on my finances, and it's the amount that I would probably need to write on my personal check before I can get any need-based financial aid. Now remember, there's also merit-based financial aid that's not based on the FAFSA. So we're just focusing on this portion here on the need-based financial aid. My EFC, or my expected family contribution, is made up of 7 different things. It's parent income, parent assets, student income, student assets, the ages of the parents, the number of people in the household, and the types of assets that we have. So mostly when people ask me to work out or do a projection of their EFC number, which is what I suggest, then I would ask them for information based on these 7 different things. There's one more thing that is going to also affect my EFC, and that's the type of school that I'm going to attend. Am I attending a private school? Am I attending a public school? Because some of the private schools will require us to complete what is called a CSS profile form in addition to the FAFSA form, and that might be a different EFC number, a different expected family contribution. So here you can already see that my choices might make a difference to my financial aid. If I'm going to choose a private school, if I'm going to choose a public school, or if I'm going to choose a school that might need the CSS profile form, then it might affect my EFC. So that's another reason why I actually want to do projections beforehand to see what this might look like if I am on the school choices that I'm looking at. So how does the school determine my need eligibility? How much financial aid might I be eligible for from the FAFSA form? So when we look at cost of attendance for a school, we look at tuition, room, board, books, living expenses, transportation. All of that is included in my cost of attendance. Sometimes people will only look at tuition and they'd forget about the room and board or the living expenses or traveling back home over Christmas or Thanksgiving. And so we need to look at all of those in totality as cost of attendance. For these purposes tonight, let's imagine that we're at a school that has a round number of about $40,000 as cost of attendance. Now that's probably a mid private school or a top public school that might represent. Then when we go and complete the FAFSA form, we're given that EFC. Let's imagine that this EFC that we filled out tonight gave us a number of $20,000. That was made up of those 7 different things: parent income, assets, student income, student assets, of the number in college, ages of the parents, and the number in the household. So what the school does is it takes your cost of attendance minus my expected family contribution, and that equals my financial need, which is the maximum amount of aid that a family may receive on need-based financial aid. Let's take a look at also the process and the timing as to when I complete the FAFSA form and what that process might look like. So the process when I'm going through the college process and my student gets to be a senior is that I fill out the application, and for many families the applications have been done already, or for some they are still putting in their applications for the different schools. And in reality, that's the first thing that should be done, are the applications for the schools. Then from the 1st of October of your senior year is the earliest time that we could complete the FAFSA form. And so from 1st of October this year, any families who had seniors, they were eligible to complete the FAFSA form already from the 1st of October. And then that timeline stretches out all the way through to March 2nd next year. So if you have a senior now and you have not completed the FAFSA form yet, the world's not going to come to an end. You still have some time to complete the FAFSA form and actually get it done. And if you have a junior or anybody younger, the first time you can complete the FAFSA form for anybody who has a junior right now is October 1st of 2023. So we do applications to the schools, you complete the FAFSA form, then the school will send you a letter of acceptance once they've received your application form. And sometimes you might get that letter of acceptance before you've even completed the FAFSA form, because remember, you've got until March the 2nd. So it just depends on the school at the time. The student might receive a letter to say, thanks for applying. You've been accepted at our school. And then it goes over to the financial aid department, and they will determine what financial aid you might be given. Now, typically, when your student is accepted at the school would have received your application and would already know what your GPA is and what your SAT scores are and any special things. And so they might assign the merit-based financial aid to say, thanks for your student applying. They've got a 3.5 GPA. They will qualify for $5,000 worth of merit-based financial aid. And you'll get that acceptance letter. Only after you've completed the FAFSA form will that then go to the financial aid department for them to look at your need-based financial aid. So we got to remember that the merit-based financial aid and the need-based financial aid are two separate steps in this. And so you might even, if you've applied to a school in September or October, you might even have received an acceptance and have been told that they qualify for a merit-based scholarship, and then might only hear later on, based on your FAFSA form, whether you qualify for any need-based financial aid. And with that need-based financial aid, the school would then make an offer to say, okay, here's what the cost of attendance is, here's your merit-based aid, here's your need-based financial aid, these are some of the loans you might be able to get, and here's the offer from the school. And only after that takes place are you able to do any kind of negotiation. And mostly this will only happen probably from about March next year if you have a senior right now. So in around about March of your student's senior year is when most people have received both the acceptance, the letter on merit-based aid, need-based aid, and the actual offer from the school. And then that's when the student will then have to make a decision and accept from the school. So that's really the process and the timing on the college planning side. Now, if you have students that are freshmen, sophomore, juniors, you really need to, or we're suggesting that you would find out what your estimated expected family contribution would be and start your plan for college now. So very often what we might do as I mentioned at the end of this, we've offered a 90-minute confidential meeting with some of the parents who would like to take that opportunity, and we can look at some of the expected schools. Even if your student is a freshman or a sophomore, we could put in some of the schools the types of schools that you think they might want to attend, and we can do some estimates for you as to those schools. Because remember, every school is different, every student is different, every family's finances are different. So this part here is a little bit of information. I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on this. We are actually recording this, and if you'd like to go into some of the details on this, then you can go back on the recording and take a look. I don't want to spend too much time on this tonight, but I want you to at least just cover and say that with the legislation that went through over the last few years on taxes and things, they're trying to simplify the FAFSA form and there's some changes that happen over a period of time. So I'd like to just cover those briefly, and then if you really want all the details, then you can take a look at the recording, which we'll send to everybody later on, or actually just pop me an email and ask me on this. So the Consolidation Appropriation Act of 2021 has a goal of simplifying and improving the FAFSA process. They've achieved some of that. And I kind of say that tongue in cheek. So the implementation of the FAFSA simplification is planned to be completed by the 24-25 school year. So you can see that that's going to be done over a period of time. The first high school class to face all of these changes is the graduating class of 2024, or the current juniors right now. And what's going to happen is that EFC name is going to be changed to what they call a student aid index. So the EFC is going to become your SAI. And this is just a quick summary of some of the things. The multi-child discount has been eliminated. So in other words, previously, if you had 2 kids in college at the same time, your EFC number was cut in half, and it helped you qualify for more financial aid. I'm not sure why they did this, but they did away with the multi-child discount and eliminated that. And so it's actually made it possibly a little more expensive for some of the people who've got 2 kids in college at the same time. Now, I do know that there's some lobbying to change that, but that's really been going on for a year now, and nothing's actually changed on that part. There has been, for those folk, some of these things, if you've actually completed the FAFSA form previously for a previous kid, you might be familiar with some of these things, but there's been a change to the income calculation for a single parent. And then also previously, if you had a farm or a family business, there's been some changes to that, and the state and income tax allowance has been eliminated, and increase in the income protection allowance. So I'll cover those in a sec. But in reality, what happens is that when you apply on the FAFSA form, remember one of the things I said, that they look at parent income and the parent assets, and there's a calculation on that that is based on how much your income is, based on your tax returns, and what your assets are, and the type of assets that you might have, which is why I strongly suggest that people actually talk to us before they complete the FAFSA form to get an idea of what the EFC might look like, and so that they can plan, if there are any planning opportunities to make that more efficient, then you can look at that. Also, some other changes is they've eliminated the selective service and the drug conviction blocks. They used to ask about selective service and if you've had any drug convictions, and they've done away with those questions. There's some Pell Grant changes and increases. The Pell Grants are aimed mostly for lower income students. As I mentioned, your EFC now becomes your student aid index. And then also, in completing the FAFSA form, previously you had to complete all the boxes and fill it all out. And actually, one of the things they did was that they have allowed the FAFSA form to link to your IRS data using the Federal Student Aid process, or the SAID process, and they will automatically upload your tax numbers onto the FAFSA form. So some of these changes are going to be happening over the next year, over the next 2 years, and we'll see kind of how this plays out. One of the big things that I'm more interested in is if the grandparents had given money to the student for college, then that money was kind of deducted from some of the financial aid that they might get, and it was considered financial support. Well, from 2023, if you have a junior now and you complete the FAFSA form next year, that grandparent 529 money, or the savings account money, or the money that the grandparents give, are really not considered as financial aid or support, which is, I think, one of the good changes in my opinion. So this screen here is really just in detail a lot of that stuff. And the reason I put this screen up here is that if parents want to go through this in detail, then you can go to the recording and just kind of freeze the screen, and you can read through all of these things, and you can ask some questions based on that. But I'm not really going to get into these details tonight. I've covered most of the bigger ones. So one of the questions is what now? We've looked at the FAFSA form, we looked at this college planning process, and there's really two sides to this college planning story. The one side is the student side, which is based on the students' choices and the students what career they're going to look at, and what their majors are going to be, and what their schools are going to be, and all that kind of stuff. And in reality, it really should start with an assessment based on what the kids' strengths are. What are your God-given talents or gifts that are natural to you? And if the student can understand those, then they could look at it and say, okay, well, how does that match up to your interests? And how does that match up to the career choices you're making? And only then should you be looking at schools based on the match for the student and how that goes. Then we come across to the parent side of this, and we say, okay, what do those finances look like, and how does that fit in with our plan? And so the question is here that as a parent, we would probably mostly give our lives for our kids. I would ask, should we be doing that? And what are we teaching them by doing that? This is a wonderful opportunity, this college planning, to teach our kids about finances and about planning and about some of the limitations of life. And so as a financial advisor, I try to get families to consider the reality as to what their plans are. Because if we can afford an expensive college, great, no big deal. But if we have some limitations on our finances, then we should consider that. And we should help our kids to hear and see actually the truth about the finances with a plan. Sometimes my my comments on this are not really popular with the parents, because one of the things that they've told their kids is, if you can get into a school, we'll make it happen. But it's really my job to help both the parents and the students. So let's go into these things with our eyes open. So a question here is, do I have a number in mind of what my end cost will be after loan, interest, and inflation for college? So this is where this planning portion comes in, is let's take a look at what this end cost might be, rather than just what tuition is for the first year, or can I make it happen for the first year. Let's take a look at all the costs involved and what that end cost would be. And then have I added in all the costs for any other kids that might be going to college? So that should form part of our plan, as well as to what the cost might be for other kids. And then let's talk to ourselves and say, well, where's the money coming from in order to make this happen? Are we going to, do we have savings? Are we going to borrow some? Are there perhaps some help from grandparents? Are there a possibility of grants and scholarships? Let's take a look and see and plan for that reality. If I'm taking loans, where is the most efficient place to get the money for loans? And am I utilizing some of that? So now we're getting into the questions of college and retirement. And so on this little graph, if we look at, let's say we're here now, and there's where we want to be in retirement. Have we looked at our retirement and college together as one planning process? Because somewhere in there, in the middle there, is college. And if we don't know what our plan is for college, for retirement, then how do we know how much we can spend on college? Because if we don't know that, we might end up there for retirement, or if we've got 2 kids, we might end up there for retirement. So hence the next question is, do I know the answers to the 4 vital financial planning questions that every financial advisor should really be able to answer for us? And before I get to those, let me go on to the 6 essential questions for parents to ask on college. So the first one is, who's paying for college? And I would write these questions down as to the planning that could go between the parents should be talking about this. Is sometimes the husband's family is paid for college, sometimes the wife's family is paid for college. So we think about who's actually paying for college. Are we paying for everything, or do we want the student to have some skin in the game? And there's no right or wrong answer here. It's different for every family. So what do I think college might actually cost? And let's get a number for that. Let's put some projections out there. Let's put some schools in. Let's see what your EFC is. And then let's do an estimate of what college might actually cost. The third one is, what is our college number? What is the amount that we're willing to pay for college? Have we spoken, husband and wife, have we spoken about this and made a decision as to how much we're going to actually spend on college? Remember right in the beginning, I said most of the money is saved based on decisions that we make and the planning that we do. And so let's talk about this, because in reality, we don't say to our kids, hey, if you graduate, I'm going to buy you a new car and you can go buy whatever car you want. Doesn't matter the price. We don't do that. But sometimes we don't actually put a number and planning on the college cost. So we want to work out what's the maximum number we're willing to spend on college, and then have we shared that with our kids, and what impact will that have on our ability to retire when we want to, without being a burden on our kids? Because remember, our kids have an interest in us being able to retire as well. Many of us, I certainly do, we've grown up in an era where sometimes our parents have lived longer than they thought, or might not have the money. And so we're in that sandwich generation where we're looking after our kids and our parents. And so as we plan for our kids' college and our future, we want to think about and say, are we wanting to be a burden on our kids, or do we want to help them plan responsibly and plan carefully for college so that we're not a burden on them? And then have we communicated these things to our students? And sometimes I think we might be surprised as to how prudent our kids actually are, and how considerate they might be. I've spoken with a number of families where we actually we talk to the kids about what this might look like for the parents, and many parents are surprised as to how understanding their kids are, and are not rushed into everybody trying to get into Brown or Harvard, where the parents are having to spend $65,000, $70,000 a year on college, if they understand that the parents just don't have the money for that. Part of what we want to do is we want to set up expectations on this, so that we're not setting up our kids for failure, where they come waiving that acceptance from Brown or Harvard, and then we've got to tell them later on that that's not going to really work. We want to set those expectations. We want to dampen their enthusiasm for those. And so if there's a possibility of that happening, we certainly want them to be able to apply and perhaps to get acceptance letters on that. But if they know beforehand that if it doesn't come within these financial parameters, then probably that school is not going to be the first choice of the schools. Have I considered the effects of the choices for student number 1 on student number 2? That's coming a little bit later. And then one more, do I know the answers to those 4 essential questions that I mentioned that every financial advisor should answer? So let's take a look at those. The first one really is, what rate of return do I have to earn on my savings or investment dollars to be able to retire at my current standard of living and have our money last through life expectancy, so that we're not dependent on our kids? That's a number that in reality we should be able to know and plan for. How much do I need to save on a monthly or an annual basis to be able to retire at my current standard of living, so that my money will last through life expectancy. Third question is, doing what I'm currently doing now, how long will I have to work to be able to retire and live in my current lifestyle or till life expectancy? And so in other words, when is it possible for me to be able to retire and be able to do these things? And then the fourth one is, if I don't do anything different to what I'm doing today, how much will I have to reduce my standard of living in retirement so that my money doesn't run out and my money can last through life expectancy? So those are really four questions that as we plan, we can start planning for those things. There is one question that our counselor at school just cannot ask us. And if we think about what that question is, it's in reality, how much money do you make? This is not a question that the school counselor can ask, which is one of the reasons why we have the webinar planned and that I've helped parents over the years, because that is confidential. And it's only really financial advisors that should be discussing those with you as you make your plan to be able to do that. So part of this is we want to be able to help the school counselors to help our kids, that if the parents have done their planning and the parents know what the answers to all these questions, then we can help the school counselor to plan better for our kids, so that they're not planning for them to for Brown and Harvard, if it's not going to work financially to be able to do that. And so let us help ourselves, and let us help our kids, and let's help the counselors to have our kids as well. So if you would like to, you can pop me an email. There's my email address, and or you can reach out by phone. And what we've done is for the Whittier parents is we've offered a no-cost 90-minute appointment, and where we can go through some of your questions, some of your personal information that is not really applicable for sharing in a group setting like this. And we'd be happy to help you to take a look at what your planning needs might be, or what that might look at. So Leah, let's take a look. Are there any questions on this that we might be able to answer?
Yeah, so our first question is FAFSA form needed for each school the student applies for?
No, the FAFSA form is a one-time form that you fill out, but it's done every year. And then what happens is, on the FAFSA form, you would list the schools that you want the information sent to, and FAFSA will then, the schools will be able to access your EFC number. Remember, they're not accessing all your taxes or anything like that, but they will be able to access your EFC number based on the FAFSA form. So you fill that out, and then you can list up to 10 schools on there, and the schools will be able to get that information. Sometimes if there's more than 10 schools, and there's a way of being able to do that, we put all the 10 schools on, and then later on you can go and change what that looks for. Just bear in mind that every single year the schools are going to ask us to complete the FAFSA form. So the first time you can complete it is 1st of October in the senior year, and then they will ask you to complete that again for year 2, year 3, and year 4. So it is something that when you do that for the first time, you want to save your username and password and all of that, because you're going to go back to it the next year.
Perfect. Hey. If there's any more questions, you guys can go ahead and post it in the Q&A or in the chat so we can see that. I also wanted to add that scholarship information is something that the school counselors would hand out in the spring. If you have a senior student, then we do come in your government class and give you some information about local scholarships as well.
Yeah. And also, on if any of the parents reach out and we go through some of the stuff as part of our process, we do have access to some of the grants and scholarships that the schools give out based on the actual school and we would do an assessment. So in other words, if we want to look at 5 different schools, we'll look at those 5 different schools, look at the costs of each of those schools based on the family's information, and then we would also give them a list of some of the scholarships that are available at those schools. If your school is a freshman, a sophomore, or junior, I know that the school covers this mostly, in that those are the years that will determine your GPA. Sometimes that GPA could mean a substantial amount of money. So in other words, some of the schools, if you have a 3.4 GPA, would have a lower merit-based grant that they give compared to students who've 3.5 and above, or 4.0 and above. And sometimes that could be some substantial financial dollars, that if the student knew that beforehand, that they might be able to say, okay, what do I need to get my GPA up to this level? And sometimes it doesn't take a whole lot of effort to be able to do that if the parents or the student know in advance.
Great. Okay, I don't see any other questions unless anyone else has anything.
All right, and if anybody feel free to reach out or to ask Leah for my information, and we're happy to help folk with any other things you have later on.
Perfect. Well, we appreciate your time, Dave, and we thank you everybody for coming on here and investing time to learn more about what's needed for your student. We appreciate, and God bless you, Dave, for all that the work that and the time that you've invested in us as well.
Thanks, Leah, and to you too.
Thank you. All right, everybody, have a good night.